Great. Well, tonight we have 5 speakers to speak about different experiences from personal perspective and community perspective about gold mining, prospecting, and the impacts of mining on health, community, and on the environment. We're all here to learn. I think we're all in a learning process. Some people have a lot more experience and have learned a lot more than others. And we have people from the US, we have some people from other experience mining in Europe, and our friends from Cavanacaw, Tyrone, who will be 2 speakers there. So we have James, who's local, whom you know, James Gilmartin will speak first, and Fidelma from Omagh and Gordon, then Eddie will say a few words here. He's involved with Life Aid, and then Emma will finish off before we take questions and answers and comments. And because there's quite a lot of material and items to go through, we'll keep the comments and questions as short and to the point as possible, and hopefully not repetitive. So we're hoping that it will be done and dusted in less than 2 hours, but we'll see. It's a long time, and it's a warm evening, so we hope to get out within that time, or even shorter. Okay, so we're going to start with James. James is a local farmer, teacher, family, community man living out the road, and he became aware of gold mining in October, the prospect of prospecting and gold mining in October, and he initiated a campaign because it involves his own farm and the place where he lives. So he'll talk to us about that experience and tell us where we can go from here. So James.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. How's it going, everyone? Thanks so much for turning out this evening again. It's great to see such a great crowd, especially on a good evening. So, as Brian said, some of you know me, but for those of you that don't, I'll give a quick rundown on who I am and I suppose how I got involved in this. So, I'm a local farmer, part-time farmer like everyone around here. I'm also a teacher. I suppose first and foremost, I'm a husband and a father. And yeah, we've been living in this part of the world with our family for a long time, generationally. I'd be very much mindful of the area and you know, I suppose from where I come from, I didn't just arrive here, like it's built on the back of good people that have come years and years before me, and hopefully we'll leave it a wee bit better for the people coming after us, and that's kind of my mindset when it comes to this. But anyways, that really was only kind of came to the fore when I found out about the prospecting. So the 7th of October last year, my sister-in-law texted me. She said there was an article in the Leitrim Observer about some prospecting licence around Manorhamilton and the 47 townlands of which we were all named. And I was like, well, fair enough, for sure. You know, I was sat on the fence a wee bit because, like, at the time I didn't know enough about it. There was a local meeting called with some people that were more informed than I was, and some of the speakers here tonight, Gordon beside me, and Fidelma over beyond, they kind of spoke at the meeting. And I went into that kind of, you know, just let's see what's here. And I'd ask people to, you know, make up your own mind on this. We're not here to tell you what to do. That's a very, very important thing. You have to go and find out about this. But the time is, you also have to be active. You can't sit in the sidelines anymore if you want to stop this happening. So going back to what happened, then it was the company that had previously been in the area were called Omagh Minerals, and they had operated up in Cavanacaw, just outside Tyrone, and that's why Fidelma spoke so eloquently on it. And look, I'm not here to talk about them particularly at the moment. They've given enough information on it, but suffice to say, they didn't exactly make me feel at home thinking that they might be coming down to this part of the world. That was Omagh Minerals. The company that the prospecting license was being asked to grant it for was called Flintridge Resources. I pay attention to the 2 names. Omagh Minerals, very benign. Flintridge Resources, also very benign. Doesn't mean a lot, but they're both subsidiaries of a massive Canadian corporation called Galantis Gold, and that's critical. The license is for base metals, gold and silver, or ores off. That's also critical because not too long after we kind of mobilised, and we got huge support publicly, we got 2,500 objections, cross-party with the County Council, and also all our members of locally represented TDs came out against this. When it was put to Minister Ryan, who was the Minister of the Department at the time, still is, in the jaw about why he would be granting this licence, or was he not aware of what gold mining and silver mining was about, he was quite, I won't say argumentative, or he was fairly disappointed that this was about base metals, about a circular economy and creating, you know, we do need base metals, you can't argue against that, but that isn't what this is about. It's a gold company coming into mine for gold and silver. But it was going to be granted then, unfortunately. It was pretty obvious that's what was going to happen. And that's what occurred. Since then it's been granted. We're going back to the two companies, Flintridge and Omagh. The new company, Flintridge, they also, and they were just newly formed, maybe 2020, we do with a bit of digging on them. They have 4 directors, 3 of which were previous directors of Omagh Minerals. So straight away, if you're forming a new company, you're kind of going, what's that about? Why change your name? But look, again, that's not for me to say. So we are where we are now. The license has been granted. What it means is prospecting. It's not the first time there's been prospecting here. The last company, as I said, was Omagh Minerals. They published a report. This is the report here. We got our hands on it. And they highlighted a couple of townlands in the area, one of which is where I live, where a lot of prospecting already had been done on the previous license. Unbeknownst to all landowners, there was 12 landowners. We approached all of them. It's like, what's the big deal? We were neighbours. No one had been asked, could anyone come on their land? Again, very important point. The onus is not on the company to ask them to come on their land. They have to show they tried to find you, but they didn't. There was one farmer who found 2 lassies in the bottom of a drain doing a bit of investigation or whatever, and he asked them, well, why didn't you find, why didn't you come, and who let you on first of all? And they said, we tried to find where you lived, and this house was literally next door to the field, and he said we couldn't find it. So it's kind of like, they will come in, and that's a very important third fact. They'll come in unbeknownst unless you find them there. So that's why putting up these signs, which we started to do since the license was given, is so important. That is where it is at now. All the things that have gone to pass prior to this, all the objections, all the political side of it that we put so much pressure on, unfortunately didn't come to bear fruit. But we're at a stage now where a prospecting license has been granted. The only people who can stop the prospectors coming in are the landowners. And that has to be very, very important. I'd rather it wasn't that way. I don't like putting up a stop to coming onto my farm. I like people to come into Leitrim, but unfortunately that's all you can do. So people need to be aware of that. So if the message I had to say from the end of my talk, if anyone wants to do anything, it's to get up these signs, show solidarity. We don't want these people here, but they need to know that. Okay, and that is really where it is at. So I've lots more I could say, but look, I'm conscious of time because there's a few more people here to speak. So yeah, I don't know who's next up.
That we have to let people in Flintridge Resources know that they're not particularly welcome to start prospecting, and definitely not to mine in this area. So that's the message from tonight, and we'll find a way of communicating that to them and with them. But the signs are vital. There are signs here, and they will be for sale afterwards for anyone who wants to buy them. They cost us money to produce, so we just ask you for the cost price. And we'll ask for donations as well at the back as you're leaving, but some have already donated coming in. Because we have costs involved in the campaign, there's always costs. Fidelma O'Kane is a retired social worker and lecturer from the Sperrins. She's involved in the group Save Our Sperrins, SOS, secretary of the group, and there are other people here in the audience from the group, Cormac McAleer, Ed Winters and Marian, who have a lot of experience of dealing with the impacts on the community, within the community of gold mining. So Fidelma is going to take you through a presentation on that.
Thanks very much, Brian, and if I get the assistant over to help me. Thanks for asking me, and as Brian said, I'm Fidelma O'Kane from Save Our Sperrins group, and we set up in 2015, June 2015, and the first slide, it's up, so you can see the beautiful area we're from, the Sperrins area of outstanding natural beauty. And like people in Leitrim, lovely Leitrim, we've always heard lovely Leitrim, that phrase associated with Leitrim and being a county with lots of lakes and that, and I have a sister who lives in Leitrim. And so, everybody is proud of the place they come from, and likewise we are. So this is the area that we're wanting to protect, the Sperrins area of outstanding natural beauty. Now, the background to our story, Dalradian, again, is a Canadian company. It's actually described as an exploration company, not as a mining company. And they set up in the north in late 2009. We weren't aware of them. In fact, I wasn't aware of them until 2014, I think it was, whenever I first heard of them, that they were giving out Christmas hampers. And everybody's saying, oh, go to Dalridian's office and you get a Christmas hamper. And you know the phrase, there's no such thing as a free dinner. And like, why would someone be giving us Christmas hampers? But anyhow, the information now, like looking back, we know a lot more than what we did then. We didn't go for the Christmas hampers, by the way. And so Dalridian got a lot of help when they came. The Geological Survey Northern Ireland gave them access to the TELS survey that shows where all the metals and minerals can be found under the ground. The north is completely mapped in this way, and I think the south is nearly finished now. And in fact, the island is going to be the most mapped country and maybe in the world for showing, where the minerals and metals are. So shortly after Dalridian got going, they got prospecting licences, and at that stage again we didn't know, and they've got them renewed every couple of years since. So the Department for the Economy grant them the prospecting licences, and that's to look for various metals and minerals. And the Crown Estate, now I don't know, I think it's different in the South, seeing you got your freedom, but the Queen of England has the rights to the precious metals, the gold and silver, under our feet, so below 4 inches. The Queen gets the rights to that, she gets a tax on anything that's mined. So the Crown Estate grants option lease agreements to the company over the same areas. And Dalridian got access to 122,000 hectares in counties Tyrone and Derry, and that's over 300,000 acres, so I don't know if you count in hectares or acres, but just to let you know, it's a vast area, and it's actually 1/10 of the 6 counties in the north. So that's how much Dalridian got. But in addition to that, other companies have been given another 15%. So there's now a quarter of the 6 counties given out in prospecting licences. And incidentally, there's 28% of the 26 counties given out in prospecting licences to mining companies. So over the years, Dalridian invested in the social licence. Obviously, the Christmas hampers were part of this, engendering goodwill to people. But it's, we found out, obviously it was too late when we found out, they had, I was going to say courted, but maybe lobbied the politicians, the people of influence in the community leaders, teachers, the priest. They had done all their, they'd done their rounds, given out gifts, and they established, 2014, they established the Dalridian Community Fund. And anyone, twice in the year, January and June, any person, either an individual or an organisation, can apply for a grant. And the only conditions are that you will sign that you will not say or do anything against Dalridian, and you will allow yourself to be used in publicity purposes. So, I know that like a lot of people, football clubs, it has caused rows because, they were wanting to get money, and schools got iPads, and schools got computer suites, and people all got different sponsorship and different things. People applied. But whenever we started to find out and went and spoke to people, some of them give the money back. They realised that it wasn't, there's nothing free. So just to say, in the 2 pictures there, you can see Arlene Foster. She was a leader of the DUP, the Democratic Unionist Party, and that's her with Patrick Anderson, and he's the chief executive of Dalridian. He lives in Toronto. And then on the right, the second from the right is Martin O'Muller. He was a Sinn Féin minister, and he's there with Patrick Anderson on the left, and in between is the Irish ambassador to Canada. So they were obviously taken in by, the sweet talk of Dalridian. So from 2011, Dalridian was prospecting, and initially it was the soil sampling. But they tell you that they're only doing, it'll cause no harm to your farm. We only want a soil sample. Well, I couldn't get the up-to-date figures last night when I was working on this, but I got up to 2018. One of their documents said they had then at that stage got over 71,000 samples. So that's some samples. And they had done 731 boreholes at that stage. And you can see there just the scar on the landscape where they made roads through the fields and the bogs and that to bring in the drill rigs and the machinery in order to make boreholes. And this boreholes and drill rigs, that's all part of prospecting. So just to let you know, and the fact that they've already done prospecting here, that will be the next step for them. I should just say to you that there was a firm down in Galway that was supplying the drill rig at one stage. They've got a number of firms, but Priority Drilling, because we visited them and spoke to them, and they were, the man was a nice man, but he just saw it as a way of, making money. He was renting out his drill rigs. Just moving on, prospecting in Greencastle on bogland, and now we're told, especially with climate change, that peat and bogland, are great carbon stores, and you can see there's a drill rig, and further down that same field there was another one, and they bring in their machinery and they bore a hole and take out a cylinder of soil, could go down maybe 300 metres, and it's looking to find out where the gold seams are. And as you can understand, probably gold doesn't come like in big nuggets or big bars like you see in films. It can be dots or specks or wee veins, so, and then the rock can be disjointed, so it can be at different levels, different places. Again, another picture at a drill rig where you can see, you keep them going there, you're slacking on the job for just you can see it up closer, and you can see how messy it is on the ground because they would have leaks. And moving on just to the next one, they use huge amounts of water to keep, it's a diamond drill, and it gets very hot, and they have to keep it cooled, and they use flocculants like chemicals and lubricants to keep all the machinery working. So a lot of that is, their health and safety record isn't very good. Gordon knows more about that than me. So moving on again, just what we found, like there was a wee dead snipe, and they lay these wooden things like for the roads to bring in the machinery through the fields and that, and they don't have any care for wildlife or flora or fauna. Again, and one farmer who initially was taken in by them and allowed them onto his land, and they did boreholes. Normally when they do take out the core sample, they would put like a sort of concrete mix in to cap it, but they had left his uncapped, and there was an orange sort of stuff coming out of it, and then the other one there was that sort of dirty water. He had fenced it off because he was worried about his animals drinking it and that. And then the prospecting, it also has implications for rural dwellers, like in terms of planning permission, getting mortgages, getting insurance, and all those have negative impacts. In fact, a man in his 70s in Derry I was chatting to recently told me he was renewing his house insurance, and he was asked, now in Derry City, did he live near a gold mine? So that question is now creeping in to their questionnaires and that, and obviously it's going to have implications. But this house in the background there, this was a family, Keenan, their grandfather was a stonemason 200 years ago. He had built this house, and they were weatherproofing it and renewing it. They put on a new roof on it, and they were putting in, windows and stuff. They were going to gather all their family from all over the world to come for a party or gathering. But anyhow, the Dalradian company got the planners to do a stop and enforcement notice because they said it was too close to their proposed explosive store. So that was able to stop that. So big, implications for people. So if we move on then, we were waiting we became aware of them in 2014 because of the hampers. Then in 2014, they were granted a 3-year exploration licence to do a tunnel, a 1.7 kilometre tunnel. And there were 44 conditions attached. Within 6 months, they had half the conditions removed because obviously couldn't meet them. And that we were very, very annoyed about that. And in fact, condition 41 was to, at the end of the 3 years, to restore the land to its original site, to its original condition. and that condition has not been fulfilled. And that was granted in January 2014, and we're now, in 2022, and there's still there's a row going on at the moment about it. Anyhow, there was really nothing happening for a couple of years, and we thought maybe they knew that we were against them and that we were organising and learning about gold mining. But in November 2017, they submitted their planning application, and it was the largest planning application on the island of Ireland, north or south. There were 10,000 pages in it, and it took us a couple of months to read it and to digest it and to write out objections against it. So just without going through it, but apart from the underground mine and the cyanide processing plant and the mercury smelting furnace, there was a dry stack facility. It was called for the mine waste. It was the rock that would be taken out, because for every ounce of gold there could be anything up to 70 tonne of waste rock. And that would be taken out, and they'd have to crush the rock, soak it in a solution of cyanide to float the gold out of it as such. So then the waste rock would be put in a big pile. And whenever we looked at the dimensions of the big pile of waste rock, 53 or 54 metres high, and one of my sons is an architect, and he said, "See, I need to see things." And he says to me, "That's 17 stories." And I didn't even know any building that was 17 stories, because we live out in the country, So to imagine this mountain of waste, and then containing all the heavy metals that would be produced as a result of taking out the gold and the rock and all that, we were shocked. That was one of the worst bits for me. Then all these tailings ponds from the water, the contaminated water, that they use a lot of water to get enough gold to make one wedding ring. I stopped wearing mine because I was that ashamed that I had gold. That to make enough gold for one wedding ring uses 8,000 litres of water. It's a huge amount of water as well. So all that sort of stuff, the electricity station, we'd often have blackouts in our area, and yet Dalridian want enough electricity that they'll be using enough that would power 14,000 homes. And they said their explosive store that they would have blasts twice a day, every day of the year for at least 20 years. And then their fueling and maintenance facilities. And I had been a naive person, thought that was just like a garage, until I read that they were going to use 4.3 million litres of diesel per annum. I hope the price stays up for them. Anyhow, so this was, we're, as I say, in the country, and the proposed site was in Crockenboy Hill, and it was 1,200 metres from the village of Greencastle, 1,200 metres from a wee primary school, from a playgroup, and it was about 500 metres from the church, community centre and the football club, playing fields, in the heart of the Sperrins area of outstanding natural beauty. The two local rivers, the Owen and the Owen Ray, are both special areas of conservation because they're home to the freshwater pearl mussels. And freshwater pearl mussels are Ireland's only globally endangered species. I saw a man in Donegal was fined 16,500 last week for damage in the freshwater pearl mussels in the River Esk. I was delighted. And I hope Dalridian are taken to task as well. So the two woods that are beside the rivers are Drumlea and Mullen woods, and they are sessile oak trees, and again special areas of special scientific interest. We have a black bog that has special flora and fauna. It's designated a Ramsar site. There's running through Dalridian's proposed site is what's called locally, it's a public right-of-way, a green road, and its historic significance in 1607 at the time of the flight of the Earls. Hugh O'Neill traversed that road going from Tullyhog near Cookstown to Rathmullen and Donegal. And there's numerous archaeological sites, like within an 8-mile radius there would be well over 100 archaeological sites. So, and furthermore, the whole northwest of Ireland is high in radon gas. When people are building houses in our area, they have to put a special barrier in the basement and the foundations to stop the radon gas seeping through. So we thought if there's a mine 1,000 metres deep into the ground, the radon gas will get out, so the radioactive contaminants will be affecting us, and that will be more cancers. So, as I say, there's a picture of their in 2017 planning application, and then we were all sending objections, and the next thing then they issued a first addendum in 2019, and it was 15,000 pages, so we had a lot of reading to do then. Then in 2020 they issued a second addendum with 20,000 pages, so drowning us in paperwork. So you might wonder why we oppose gold mining, but because it's a dirty industry, and as I said on Ocean FM this morning, I would say you don't have to take my word for it, check it out yourself. Most people have access now to the internet. Google gold mining and health, gold mining and water, gold mining and air, and there's a lot of information there, and that's what we've been researching the last 7 years. So it produces the heavy metals, and that causes pollution. There's the tailings from the thing, the mercury slag, the radioactive contaminants in our area, the use of the diesel. Now, could I say one of their later, they reduced the 4.3 million litres of diesel to 3.3 million litres of diesel per year. It's still a right lot of diesel fumes and poison effectiveness. So the water would be polluted because all that will seep and soak into the water table and into our wee rivers, and it will also blow about in the air. And in fact, we were speaking to a Finnish biochemist who lives near a gold mine in Finland at Katila, and he told us he found traces of arsenic and mercury, very fine 2.5 particulate matter, had travelled up to 60 kilometres from the gold mine in Finland. And he said that obviously we're in a very bad position, but he said that that fine particulate matter enters people's lungs and it can't be removed, and it causes respiratory diseases and cancers. And I suppose we all know, I mean, well, the older people like myself, you know, back in the 1980s, whenever Chernobyl happened, how the radioactive stuff blew over here, and even more recently, the dust from the Sahara Desert, you know, came here, so thousands of miles. So the toxic dust, the noise and light pollution, the noise from the explosions, from the machinery, from the travelling there and the machinery on site, they told us that their site would be lit up like an airport 24 hours a day, so there'd be light pollution. And we have a dark skies project beside us because we do have dark skies because there is no light pollution. And farming, fishing and tourism would all be damaged, and they're the local sort of small industries, family farms, fishing and tourism. We're the headwaters of the River Foyle, and that flows down to Derry, and it's famous for salmon fishing. The clean green image of the country, and I'm talking the whole country, is at risk. And taxpayers' money is being used. You know, they got grants. Arlene Foster offered them £326,000 to create jobs. The police, back in September, the police announced that they were going to provide free security for mining companies. And yet they don't have money to investigate normal crimes. If you had a burglary and you're phoning them, they wouldn't be out. And the government departments have spent hours and hours on this planning application. In fact, Dalradian in the local newspaper said that they had had over 100 meetings with government departments. And I suppose what we have learned is big mining companies start by mining the community, and that certainly happened in our community, and they divided the community by, courting certain people, and then, and could have just gone back to the prospecting, and you wonder if people let them on their land. They offered farmers money. Some people said no, but then it caused annoyance because one farmer got £100 and his neighbour got £1,000 because he had said no lots of times. And I mean, one man told me that they phoned him 4 times in the one day, asking to get into his land, and he had quite a lot of acres of land. And that, but he remained steadfast. But that's what they do. And then if they get into your neighbour's land, they can actually go underneath, at an angle. And so it's really terrible, but it has caused a lot of friction in a community that would have been a very close-knit community. You see it, we see it now at wakes. When you go into a wake, most people have a room for the anti-mining people and a room for the pro-mining people, because, we don't sort of speak to each other. Anyhow, your health is your wealth, that's what I would say, and I think people know it now, especially over the last 2 years with COVID. You can't buy health. and it's more important than ever that we protect our water, our air, our land and our health and pass it on to the future generations. Now, in recent years, in the last probably 2019, in the last 3 years, what has been happening is there's been criminalisation of the protectors. We call ourselves protectors and defenders of the water and the land and the air and the health. And they've been doing things, okay, but I think I've got these slides back to front. But anyhow, the police, when we reported to the police say it's not a crime. And they haven't persecuted the Dalridian employees. And the protectors have been harassed by police, for example, sitting shining their lights on, and people in the north are still quite suspicious of the police. And if police go to your house, people are wondering, are you an informer or what? Why are the police at your house and stuff like that? And at roadblocks, pulling you in at the side, and then people are wondering, what did they do that they're being pulled in, and that sort of stuff. And take photos of us when we're protesting and picketing and that, and come right up to our faces, and close-ups, they don't enhance us or anything. And I would like a soft focus. And the phone us and say, how can I help you? And we were very wary and suspicious, about them. So they've brought charges against protectors, aggravated trespass. One man now is up. He's been up 17 times on a charge of aggravated trespass and is put off every month. And the poor man's a lorry driver, and every month, and he's paid like by the day, and every month he has to take a day off work to go in the court, and then it's put off for another month. 17 times, and now it's again, I think it's next week, maybe it's the beginning of August. But, he chained himself to Dalridian's gates, and that he caused no damage, and he did that for a couple of hours, and he was charged with aggravated trespass. Harassment of Dalridian employees. One man was charged with harassing his finger aggressively at a Dalridian employee. Now, I stopped to ask three of them, what they were doing at the river because they were acting suspiciously. And the police phoned me and told me if I did that again, I would be charged with harassment. And I said to them, did you see the size of them compared to me? I says, I'm a woman in my 60s. The three of them were much younger. They were bigger built. There was two of them were over 6 foot. And I said, how could I have harassed them? I says, it would be a joke, only it's serious. So all that sort of stuff. Police calling at our houses late at night, especially on a Friday night, offering cautions to us. If we'd accept a caution, they'll drop the charges. But that, is saying you've admitting you've committed a crime. So we don't believe we have. And then if we go to a picket at Dalridian, the police are immediately out. I think I should have had this slide now, the next one. I should have had this before that last one, sorry about that. So the crimes, death threats, 3 men, including my husband over there, have got death threats. And again, the police came out, delivered them, and said they had no further information except they were viable and credible, and that they advised us to take precautions. Murder bids, there's been a couple of men have been knocked down by employees of Dalridian, driving vehicles, driving a tractor, driving a van, and driving cars. And people have been sent across the bonnet of cars. Physical assaults, being punched in the shop, caught in CCTV, and the police said it was no crime. Threatening phone calls, we've got lots of them recorded. Sex calls, I love my husband, if somehow sex calls, like a man that has time of day. And people that followed at night, especially women, and Gordon has been followed at night as well, but I suppose the women would be more scared, suspicious cars following them at night. And cyberbullying, I just get most of the cyberbullying, but I don't care, just ignore it, so don't give them oxygen. So just putting this into the context, tell me if I'm going too long. I suppose these are things we have learned since, we've been slow learners, but over 7 years we've learned a lot. The prospecting led into exploration, which led into the mining application. So I'm saying to you, it's likely they're not just prospecting just to go away. The prospecting licenses in the north grant them permitted development rights. That means that they can do the boreholes. They don't need an environmental impact assessment. no, I don't know the situation here. The mining companies can sue the government for loss of legitimate expectation of future profits. So if they're not granted their planning application, they can actually sue the government for loss of their future profits. So that's why I know there's a lot of talk in the south about SETA now. I would be very worried about it. The government reliance on extractive industry for expertise, like because there's no history of gold mining, the gold mining company is providing the experts for the government departments, to advise them. And this has led to policy capture. So the government's producing policies that really favour them. And that's really, their policies are prioritising mining over people and over the environment. And government agencies are working for the mining companies, and that's like the Geological Survey Northern Ireland, and I can tell you the Geological Survey Ireland is also working for them, and the Geological Survey Ireland are often up visiting Dalradian, and the two of them are out together in Toronto at a mining conference speaking for the island of Ireland, no border. Okay, so what else? Oh, we found this out from our new area plan. We saw these specially protected, guarded areas, and we thought this was great. They were going to safeguard our area, because it was like special, all the special environmental things. Well, no, they were protecting it for mining companies. So that's what the safeguarded. So be careful about your area plans. The enforcement regulation of extractive industry is ineffective, very weak. Whenever you phone to report a pollution incident from, say, the boreholes, I saw stuff running off one day, they were more interested in who I was, my name, address, my email address, my phone number. Why was I walking over the road? Why was I walking over that road that I saw? The drill rig, and the thing overflowing and flowing down to the river that's supposed to be specially protected. It's unbelievable. And then now the greenwashing. And I saw Sean Canny. I mean, he was out. He was your Minister for Natural Resources before Eamon Ryan, and he was out in Toronto 2 years running and saying Ireland is open for business. And he says mining is now essential for the new green energy and the circular economy, and that's quoting directly from him. And I should tell you this about Eamon Ryan. We went down to the door to see Eamon Ryan because I thought the Green Party were for the environment. And he stood with us and had a photograph taken outside the door, and he held a banner that said, "No toxic gold mining, Dalradian out of Ireland." He signed an objection letter against gold mining in the Sperrins, and we were delighted. And then whenever it came up for Donegal and a showing and for Leitrim, I wrote to him and I sent him a copy of the photo. And I said, "Eamon, you signed an objection against gold mining in the Sperrins." I says, "What about our friends in Leitrim and our friends in Donegal? How can you allow it there whenever, you were against it in the Sperrins?" Well, he didn't reply to me. Now, I suppose over the last couple of years, and I'm just only telling you this because just to let you know what's ahead of you, if they go ahead now to apply for planning permission. We learned about gold mining, we produced posters and leaflets, we held public information meetings. I think we had about 50 of them all around the country. We're networking nationally and internationally, letter writing objections, lobbying people. Our lobbying's not too good, politicians don't listen to us. Social media has been great. Save Our Sperrins is a Facebook page. The media is good, too. Some of the media is more I don't know if any of you saw the Spotlight programme on BBC back in November, I have a link to it if anyone wants it. Pickets and protests, we sometimes, Dalradian, because they sponsor a lot of events, give out money, we would turn up just to picket outside and protest and sing songs and have a bit of fun, and that happens. And then we sent 2 delegates over to the PDAC conference in Toronto. That's the annual mining conference, and that's where Ireland has a stand. We wondered, how did Dalradian, a Canadian company, know about a wee place like Greencastle and the Sperrins area of outstanding natural beauty? how did they pick Leitrim out of all the places in Ireland? It's because they're given access to the maps and they're told, come here, they get tax concessions, they're told that we have a very relaxed environmental legislation, and there's all these lines are spun to them. So we couldn't believe it. We sent 2 young people over in March 2018 and they took photos and videos and came back with evidence to us. And it was Sean Kyne that time that was there speaking for Ireland. And then that's from Standing Rock to Tyrone 2018. That's how we met the good people that we were expecting over this weekend, and unfortunately they've had to postpone it, but we hope it'll be rearranged again. And we had Chaz, Stuart and Emma we're delighted to see back with us today. They were visitors in 2018. We had sent them solidarity at Standing Rock whenever they were campaigning against the oil pipeline being put through their reservation. Direct action, we had a few bits of direct action, nothing very exciting. Stand going up on the roof of Dalradian's compound, and going in, and Cormac, my husband, chained himself to the drill rig one day and stopped the drill rig for 8 hours. And then we had, in 2019, with council elections, and because none of the parties officially came out and spoke against the gold mining, we stood a fella, Emmett McAleer, as an independent anti-gold mining candidate, purely on that ticket. And he was the first one elected in Mid-Tyrone, and we were absolutely delighted. We come from quite a Republican area, and the party was very surprised whenever Emmett was elected he was the first one in Mid-Tyrone. So individuals, and let me say, it's not that all the politicians are against us. Individual councillors, individual MLAs have come to us and said, we are supporting you, but it's the parties haven't come out publicly and said, we are against gold mining and we will fight it. So that's what we want. And judicial reviews, we've had a few of those. We had one successful one that I took in 2017. It ran for 23 months and eventually was successful, and it was to stop a discharge consent granted to Dalradian to put 9 heavy metals into the Omagh River, like mercury and arsenic and lead and cadmium and chromium and all that. So that, they quashed it at the end of. And then in recent times we've heard from America, from attorneys there, about the rights of nature and rights of communities, and we've started to assert that we have a right as a community, free, prior and informed consent, and that we should be consulted. We live in the area and we should have the right to say no. And then rights of nature. Nature is not a commodity to be exploited. It has to be protected and allowed to regenerate and to be there for future generations. I'm near the end, our second last. So objections. We've kept writing in objections, and it's currently at 42,270. I know there's another 2,000 that has to go on the planning portal. And so because of the huge amount of objections, there has been a public inquiry announced, but no date yet. So our next step is we have to get experts and consultants who will work for us and who will speak for us at the public inquiry. So we'll have to do a fundraiser for that. But we're going to do that. And then finally, my last slide, that was a message we sent out to PDAC the following year after our 2 spies had been out. Ireland says no to mining. And we spoke for the whole country, I hope you don't mind. And then this is our, this last wee one, this is just one of our people going over to Dalradian's compound with a banner, no poisonous gold mining in the Sperrins, Dalradian out. And it always reminded me of a saying of John F. Kennedy, one person can make a difference and everyone should try. And that's what we believe. People working together will be able to protect our water, our air, our land and our health. Thank you.
Thank you, Fidelma. I suppose it gives us a sense of what is happening, what the pride of place, the community and environmental values, and the people who live there are vital in stopping the social license granted by the money and power to divide a community. And I suppose we're at the stage here where we can actually learn from that and make sure our community is divided. And build an understanding of what has happened in the Sperrins and try and ensure that that does not happen here. And thanks, Fidelma, for telling us about your experience. And I know that it's a huge amount of time, energy and effort to keep the pride of place and the community values to the centre when you're criminalised and against that power and money. And the political drive, I suppose, in SETA in the south here, and you know, is to support corporate values which do not regard people, the community or the environment and social values. So we're here to try and build those social values and environmental values to maintain the pride of place for lovely Leitrim and treasure it for the future. So we have Gordon Dunn as an engineer, involved for the last 3 years in CAMIO, CAMIO, Corporation Against Mining in Omagh, and he's observing mining in Cavanacaw and the activities of mining companies since 2005. So Gordon will tell us more about his experience there.
Okay, thanks everyone. If you don't mind, I'd prefer to stand, if that's okay. My name is Gordon Dunn. I live in Omagh, Co.Tyrone, pretty close to the Cavanacaw mine site, only about 3 miles away from it. I recognise a lot of faces here today. A lot of people were at the protest at the Cavanacaw gates just a few months ago. Can we just have a show of hands of everybody who was there? Yeah, so what a very, very good support. It was really nice to see you all there. Today, what I'm going to do is just show you more about the Cavanacaw site and actually what gold mining is actually entails and what it physically looks like and what effect it can have on the landscape. So we'll begin here. Okay, so as you're aware, this is a prospecting map showing the western side of Northern Ireland here, and you can see the prospecting zone here, OM 116. This is the region in which the Galantis gold mine is situated, and basically it's almost 100 square miles of prospecting area. It's 71.9 to be precise. But Galantis also have another area just northwest of that. You can see there it's OM 419. And that's another 100 square mile area which borders the Donegal area. They also have further prospecting areas within Donegal, and of course you're aware of the potential activity here in Leitrim as well. So that's that. The next slide here is just showing you the landscape. Now a lot of you would have seen this the day you were up in Omagh. Basically the landscape is set in a pristine environment at the foot of the Pigeon Top Mountain, which is at the foothills of the Sperrins. And as you can see there, it's as green as anything there. And if you just look carefully, you can see a slight blot on the landscape. That is the actual gold mine. Literally only the tip of the iceberg in this case. You'll see a lot more devastation as you get closer to it. Okay, so how did it happen? How did it all start? I'll just read this excerpt from a book by Niamh Moore, who is from the Department of Politics at the Queen's University in Belfast. This article was published back in 1995 when the whole question was being considered. While on the part of the state, there has been a continual and almost unlimited welcome for the mining multinationals, there has been an increased sophistication in the response by communities confronted by them. In the early days, the communities, as well as the state, welcomed the mining companies with open arms, expecting to share in the bonanza promised by the mining. The state did its utmost to accommodate the companies in the early days, to imposing no environmental regulation on their operations and allowing the export of both unprocessed metals and untaxed profits. There was no shared bonanza. Communities organised in response to mining issues are now likely to oppose the projects immediately. Alongside this, cynicism has emerged at the role of the government in attracting such developments. Opposition to mining proposals is now often accompanied by suspicion of the role of government and the governmental process. So this was back in 1995. The situation is still relevant today. Okay, so let's have a closer look. This satellite image just shows the size of the Cavanacaw mine. As you can see, it's approximately 0.7 miles in the north-south orientation and 0.5 miles in the east-west orientation, and it occupies 62 hectares on the site. The main excavation on this site is 50 metres deep. Currently, well, until recently, it has been exclusively an open cast pit, but now they're developing an underground tunnel network. As I said before, the mine is situated only 3 miles from Omagh, which has a population density of around 30,000 people in the main urban area. Okay, so this is what it looks like up close. As you can see here, this is the mine site, the main entrance here on the Buttery Road. Towards the front gate here, you can see the administration offices, and you can see the main pit itself. This is known as the Kearney pit. That is the pit that is approximately 50 metres deep. Now, because the open cast pit is relatively exhausted at this point, the only way for the mine to remain viable was to go underground. And in 2018, they got planning permission to develop an underground mine. Now, they've had a few delays with COVID and so on, but they're really battling into that now. Okay. This is what the mine looks like from the south side. And in the foreground here, you can see what they call the polishing pond. This is the pond with what they call clean water prior to discharge into the Green Burn, which is a tributary for the main rivers that flow through Omagh. It eventually flows into the Strue River. In the mid-background there, you can see one of the settling ponds, and towards the top of the screen, you can see a tailings dam. And over towards the right-hand side, you can see the Kearney pit. Okay. This is the main administration block and offices and so on, and you can see the main gate. A lot of you that were up in Omagh that day will recognise the gate and recognise that area. And over to the extreme left here, you'll see a white rectangle. It looks like a container. That is actually an explosive store. So that is where they store their detonators, ammonium nitrate, and so on. So that is guarded by a pretty small fence, but that is their explosive store. This is the bottom of the Kearney pit. Okay, so as I said previously, it's approximately 50 metres deep. And at the very bottom, you can see the access portal for the underground tunnel network. To the right-hand side, on a slightly upper level, you can see the escape portal. So if anything were to happen underground, cave-in, flood, fire, whatever, the escape portal is where employees would potentially escape from. The white road there is basically the access ramp down to the portal. Okay. This is the tailings dam, or otherwise known as a settling pond. As you can see, it has achieved full capacity many times over, and the company has decided to dig out areas of the settling pond to achieve more capacity. Now, the scale of this is probably quite hard to appreciate, but that is approximately 200 metres long and 150 metres wide. So, you know, if you can just look at the tracks there, you might get an appreciation of how the scale is on that now, but it's absolutely mind-blowing when you're up there and you're actually standing on the ground beside it. Those are canyons, they're not shallow holes, those are canyons. Okay, this is the processing plant, which is based on site. You may be aware that Galantis, they don't actually produce a finished product. What they do is they produce a concentrated ore that's then shipped overseas to New Brunswick in North America, where it is smelted by an external company. They actually sell the concentrated ore, so once it leaves the property here, it's no longer the property of Galantis. Okay. This is just looking from the other angle here. You can see the actual processing plant itself. There's actually 2 stages here. There's an external one and an internal one. This is the external side. The process begins over the right-hand side. You can see a ramp there. Material is once it's excavated from the mine, it is dumped into the grid there. It's basically large rocks are separated at that point. It then goes into a jaw crusher for further reduction. That's the yellow object in the middle. It then goes into a scrubber and a screener, where its large particles are then diverted into a cone crusher. The smaller articles are fed directly up into a hopper. Then the crushed product from the cone crusher goes into the hopper as well. So the 2 crushed products are actually mixed there, and then it enters the indoor mill. Okay, that's just another review. I'll just pass on because I'm conscious of time here. This is a view of the processing site from the other angle here, and again, in the foreground here you can see the machinery workshop where the various vehicles are serviced and so on. The main processing plant is the brown building here. Towards the north side here, you can see they actually have a mines rescue station there as well. Just adjoining the brown building, there's a kind of like a lean-to compartment right beside that. You'll notice some white objects in there. They're actually bags of concentrate, gold ore concentrate, ready to be dispatched to the smelter. So generally they pack them up into 24-ton loads and they're shipped out, and those are generally 1-ton bags. This is another view here of the Kearney pit, and we're looking at it from the south here as well. Because this picture is taken at a slightly lower elevation, it gives you a greater appreciation of the scale and the potential impact on the landscape. The hill you see here on the left-hand side is a purely man-made spoil heap. Then in contrast, you've got the 50-metre deep excavation on the right-hand side here. But if you look in the background, you can see the original landscape, the green flowing hills and so on. So this is just such a gash on the landscape, you know, it's absolutely sickening to see this, you know. In terms of the landscape up there, there is a lot of pyrite in the natural country rock. When this pyrite is exposed to oxygen and water, it can develop a condition known as acid mine drainage, which is very bad for the water cycle and can create problems. So if you look at this settling pond here, which is at the Cavanacaw site, you'll notice this brown orangey discharge within the water. This is a sign that the pyrite is present in this case. Okay, so if we just look at that in more detail, so acid mine drainage is caused by the oxidation of pyrite, and it produces sulfuric acid. Okay, it has a very low pH, sometimes less than 2 on the pH scale. Acid drainage is harmful to the environment, and it's a major cause of contamination in groundwater. It is prevalent in areas where coal and gold mining takes place. So you may have seen in some historic applications and so on, the rivers here, this characteristic orange-browny tint on the bedrock, on the bed of the river, is an indication that there is acid mine drainage. And because of the acidity in this water, nothing lives. It's dead. That river is dead and beyond repair as well. It's a very difficult process to stop once it's started. Okay, so we've got a few pictures here. As I said before, up until very recently, the operation has been purely open cast. The image here on the left-hand side shows the bottom of the Kearney pit. And if you look very carefully, you can see an orange area there too. That is where the pyrite is. Now, the pyrite and the gold go hand in hand. Where you find one, you'll find the other. And the actual black areas there, they're the gold ore seams. So that is what they were pursuing. That's what they're physically digging out, and that is what they're concentrating. That's what they're processing. That's where the gold is. So they're being very selective at this stage. They're digging out that black product, and then they're concentrating it and shipping it out for smelting. Okay. This is just another image here of the processing plant from the outside as well. You can see the conveyor feeding the hopper. So the elevated conveyor goes up there into the hopper. That is where they store the crushed product before entering the interior of the mill. If we just go inside now, you can see the inside. The actual process that they use to concentrate the ore is called the flotation process. And through it they use a number of chemicals to actually float the gold or the gold ore out of the rock, the crushed rock as such. The rock is crushed to a kind of like powdery consistency. It goes through the flotation process, and on the right hand side you can see these bubbles and so on. These are more or less separated from the process. They're dried and they're bagged, and that's what they ship out to North America. So as you can see, it looks nothing like gold at this stage. It's just a pure grey powder. As referred to previously, these are the bags, the 1 ton bags, or thereabouts 1 ton. They can vary somewhat. They're ready for shipping. So these are the bags sent to Canada. Typically 24 ton consignment is shipped out on a 20-foot container. Depending on when the container's full, they usually organise that. The bags are between 1 to 1.3 tons, and within this concentrate, there's typically 100 grams per ton. So, for example, if you have a ton bag there could potentially be 100 grams of gold in it. Gold, though, is their primary target when it comes to this site, but it actually should be called a lead mine, not a gold mine, because they produce a lot more lead and even more silver than gold. If you look at the concentration of lead, about 9 or 10% of that bag would be lead. 250 grams of silver would be produced, and only 100 grams of gold. So once they sell these bags to the smelter, basically, and they are paid roughly an average of 95% of the previous month's gold supply. So that covers the smelting fees and so on. So basically, it's not the property of Galantis at this stage. They don't produce finished gold. It's purely an ore concentrate as such. Okay. This, as I said, the open cast pit is exhausted now. So in order for the mine to remain productive, it has to go underground. And this is the proposed development. As you can see here, you can see at the very top of the image, you can see a gradual decline which goes down underground. That blue line is the actual gradient into the existing Kearney pit. And at the very bottom of that pit, you've got the portal. That portal will lead into a spiral decline, which goes down approximately 280 meters into the ground. And from that spiral decline, you're going to have 7 horizontal drifts that will emanate outwards. Now, it hasn't been defined exactly how far out they're going to go at this stage. I think that's going to be clearer to see in the future. The dark red areas that you can see on this are the actual ore bodies that they've identified as targets. Okay, so the lighter orange bits, they may not even process, they'll basically continue the drifts through those areas, but the main gold-bearing areas is where it's profitable. That's where they're going to target. Just in terms of scale, anybody who's familiar with Omagh or County Tyrone, you've got a comparison here with the Sacred Heart Chapel in Omagh. It's 65 meters high, so you can see it's absolutely dwarfed within the mine plan here. And then you've got the Strabane TV mast, which is the tallest structure in Ireland, tallest freestanding structure in Ireland. It could be almost completely buried within the mine. in its current developed plan. Okay. So in terms of comparison, Fidelma mentioned the proposed mine at Greencastle. Now, the mine at Cavanacaw is bad enough, but if you look at the mine at Greencastle, it is approximately 3 times larger. So 900 meters deep is what they're proposing. And you can see the actual same buildings there as a comparison there to the right-hand side. You've got the Sacred Heart Chapel and you've got the Strabane TV mast. I think you can put 3 of those masts top to toe within that site. So it's frightening. Our main concern is the disruption to the hydrological system. Also, there's a threat there to air as well, and airborne particles and so on. But the hydrogeological system is probably the most primary concern. The miners themselves will tell you that, you know, there's a lot of material in the country rock, naturally occurring materials such as arsenic, lead, and so on. That's fine if it's left alone, but the mining process exacerbates the release of these materials, and if you interfere with that country rock, it's going to be released. Where does it go? It goes into the water stream, it goes into the water course. Okay, so this diagram here basically shows the impact of a mine on the local area. It's a shame I don't have a laser pointer here, but I'll try and explain everything. Basically, you can see the large diagonal going downwards here. This is actually a access to a mine. So as you dig that hole, if you can imagine if you're at the beach or somewhere and you dig a hole, the first thing that happens, it'll fill up with water, okay? Obviously you can't have water in a mine, so you're going to have to pump that out. But as you pump that water out, it's going to constantly refill. So those pumps have to be on 24 hours a day. They have to be of suitable capacity. But as you pump that water out, the water table directly above the mine is going to form a depression, what we call a cone of depression. Now, that water table will interact with the natural rivers, the springs, boreholes, all kinds of stuff that farmers, communities, houses and so on are going to depend on. But as that water table drops, those boreholes, those streams, everything, they're going to be influenced. They're going to dry up, they're going to have reduced volume and so on. So that has significant impact. So they will lose volume or stop, and the pollution plume can contaminate naturally occurring aquifers and so on as well. So it is quite a threat. Now, just to clarify here, from the Galantis 2018 application, they have confirmed that there will be an inflow rate to the mine of approximately 1,290 meters squared per day into the mine. So that amount of water is going to be pumped out on a daily basis. It could be more, it could be less. It probably won't be any less than that. We have a lot of rainfall in that area. I wouldn't be surprised at all, but that is a lot of water. And obviously, you can't take that kind of water out of the system without influencing other things, so it's going to be quite significant. Okay, so as I said here, the total groundwater inflow rate of 1,290 meters squared per day is possible for the underground mine. Okay, dewatering associated with the mine void will result in a decrease in groundwater levels of around 1 meter up to 1 kilometer from the mine workings and around 10 meters close to the mine void. So that's quite a significant cone of depression. It's just another aerial image showing the mine portal. And to the left-hand side here, you can actually see with the development of the underground mine, they've started to backfill this pit here. So you can see the entrance there. They've got a small, it looks like a small lake or a puddle there. There's actually a dewatering sump. So any water that accumulates there, it's pumped back out into the settling ponds. But what they're going to be doing in the future is they're going to be putting a covered access along that mine ramp. And this material here, you can see on the left-hand side, is going to completely cover that. It's going to completely fill that hole back up again as they develop more underground. Okay, this is just some hardware that has arrived on the site recently. I understand these are raised liners for a ventilation shaft. Okay, and these are some core samples that are discarded on site here as well. So, you know, they go to the bother of getting all these core samples, and you can see they're quite casually stored and not even covered here. They're almost disposed of on this site. And here we have just another image of the mine site here from the north side. This image is just over 24 hours old, so it's really on the ball here. Okay, another aspect we touched on there is chemicals. As you can see, towards the top of the Kearney pit here, the number of IBC chemical tanks that are quite casually laying here, they're in disrepair and so on. Quite worrying when you see that. Chemicals used on this, actually this slide here, I'll just read it out for you, it's probably hard to read there. Water discharged from the polishing pond has a slightly elevated sulfate concentrations and a slightly higher BOD and alkalinity as calcium calcite than surface waters. Polishing pond receives supernatant from the TMF. The chemicals used in the ore processing and tailings treatment are an activator, that's copper sulfate, a frother, which is MIBC, and a collector called potassium amyl xanthate, or PAX. Okay, so these are chemicals which are, obviously it's not as bad as the cyanidation process, but there are things that you wouldn't want into the water course. So, you know, those containers are quite casually sitting there. We have actually observed some containers leaking on site before, which is also very concerning. Okay, this is coming to the end here now. This is one of the documents in their planning application showing the proposed mine site, and it's kind of overlaid on an aerial photograph here. So you can see the Kearney pit here, and the orange area above that shows the covered decline, which will go down into the portal, which is already existing. That entire area will be covered up in due course, but immediately to the left-hand side there, you're going to have an ore stockpile, and you've got various other bits of infrastructure that are going to be added there as well too. Remember, that's just the tip of the iceberg. The main part of this mine is underground, and underground is where most of the damage to the environment will occur. I'll just go on to the last few slides here. That is basically just a larger view of the previous one. I can appreciate that's quite difficult to see there. Okay, so as I said, Galantis have been developing the underground mine. From 2018 to now, their main effort has been developing the access tunnels and so on. The image on the right-hand side shows the underground tunnel map and where they are currently. It's quite hard to read there, but basically they're at the stage now where they're ready to do production. Everything to the stage has been developing the tunnel network, so they're almost ready to go into production. In order to do production, they're going to be using a method called stoping process, or long hole drilling, as they call it. And the next few slides kind of illustrate how that works. Okay, so the first slide here basically shows an underground ore body. If you can imagine, the grey is the country rock, the surrounding natural rock as such, and the orange or the yellow areas are potential gold ore target areas as such. You've got three levels as such, and above and below each level you've got what they call the drifts. These are horizontal tunnel sections which will link all the ore bodies. Now each of these ore bodies is 35 meters high. Okay, so the drifts are 35 meter separation. And you can see there I've got a drill rig in there above level 3, just to give you a rough indication of what scale this is going to be. This is absolutely enormous here. Okay, so the first stage is to go into the top of level 3. They will go right to the end, and they're going to start drilling those ore bodies. And when they've drilled them, and blasted, the material will basically fall to the bottom. Now typically, it's not as it's illustrated here. They would do one at a time, but you can see they've targeted alternate targets as such. Now as the material falls down into the lower drift, that will be what they call mucked out, and the material will be taken along the drift and taken to the surface. Now once that's complete, those vacant ore body areas will be filled with waste rock from the surface that has gone through the processing and basically not ore as such. So it'll be taken back, mixed with cement, and it'll fill the voids. The drill rig will then drill the remaining ore bodies, okay, and they will be excavated. Okay, so as that material falls down, that will be mucked out, taken to the surface. So it's a way of getting everything out of that target zone. Go to the next slide then. Once those vacant areas are filled up again, that bottom section of the ore body, level 3, is then redundant as such. They move on to the next one. So as you can see, the drill rig has moved up there. It's going to target the first set of ore body locations first of all. Okay, the scoop tram will be underneath, taking out that material that has been blasted from those 4 sections. Then the process repeats again. They will be filled. Then the drill rig, in that time the drill rig will be concentrating on the other areas, and so on. And at this stage, the drill rig is on the top level. They concentrate on the 4 areas. That will be mucked out, backfilled, and then the final areas blasted out and backfilled. And that is how the ore target will be harvested as such, you know. But you've got to appreciate, you know, a lot of people think of mining, they think of people in tunnels, small, you know, 4 metre square, 4 metre wide, 4 metre high tunnels, you know, digging a mine, long linear features. It's not like that. They're only access routes. These massive caverns are going to be exploited. These are going to be completely targeted and completely removed. That material is going to be brought to the surface. It's going to be processed, and all the waste rock, well, not all the waste rock, only 50% of the waste rock will go back underground. Because of compaction issues, that's all that will fit. So the rest of the rock is going to remain on the surface. Now, as I said before, the mining process exacerbates the release of naturally occurring harmful materials. So you've got the arsenic, you've got the lead, you've got all kinds of materials there, all kinds of heavy metals that are going to be leached out from these areas. So that is what the problem is here. Okay, and just a few points to end on here. We mentioned the shared bonanza there in the first couple of slides. You know, the promises have come in. You'll get lots of jobs. It'll be good for the community. We're all going to get lots of money out of this. They're having to recruit from overseas. They can't get people to work in the mine. They're bringing in people from, like the UK government has issued Galantis with a license to actively recruit people from overseas. So what's in it for the locals? Also, quite recent development is the company has been summoned to court to answer charges on health and safety and environmental issues. Now, I don't know a lot of details about this, but one of them involves an inrush of water to the mine, but they're up for trial again on the 4th of August. So hopefully we'll know more about it then. Okay, I think that's me.
Thank you, Gordon. That's, I suppose, a very interesting and technical description of what's happened. And I suppose when you mention the word bonanza, we all think of the gold rush out in the movies. And it's a very different thing, pyrite being the fool's gold. But I suppose what we know here is that our economy relies on farming, mixed incomes from farming and other work, tourism, recreation and environmental services. And we have the River Bohan here that runs into Lochgill and provides us with our water. So it's a special area of conservation. And from what you've told us, Gordon, it looks like our water is under threat because our water here in North Leitrim is extracted from the lake, and it serves the entire area in Sligo as well. Ireland has 3 underground mines, and one of them is the 3rd largest in the world in Navan. It's supplying zinc lead concentrate, and Ireland, I think, has the highest level of zinc lead concentrate production in the European Union. So there is, I suppose, a drive by the government to see the bonanza realised from this, and I suppose we have a challenge to show that the bonanza for our community is really from tourism, recreation, farming, environmental services, and to counter that with the destruction that these mines will bring. So hopefully we will be learning an awful lot more about what's happening, what's likely to happen, and what happens behind closed doors. So thank you for that, Gordon. It's a major concern for us here. So we are going to listen to Eddie next. Eddie has a lot of experience of dealing with, I suppose, the legal, political and local issues in terms of his experience with Love Leitrim, and also with the Irish Farmers Association, where she's environmental rep for the Leitrim Executive. So he's going to tell us briefly a little bit about where this might happen and show you some maps in Leitrim. So I'll hand it over to Eddie, and he's a local man to Manorhamilton here. So thanks, Eddie.
Thanks very much. I'm a local farmer. I'm chair of local IFA Manorhamilton. So I think, obviously, as you'll find out, farmers have a huge role to play in this, because they need our permission at this stage to come on our land. So we're taking a big interest, and we hopefully be there to support farmers. And hopefully farmers will be farmers have to make a decision about this in this area. So hopefully that will go our way. What we've been doing is we've been just trying to figure out what's happening. Now there's no expertise here, but we can read the documents like everybody else. And so I'm just going to show you some of the things that are of interest, or that might be of interest. So the first thing is, I came across this map, and this is really about gold prospecting right across, from Mayo all the way up through Northern Ireland and into Scotland. So this is why they're here. So there are these fault lines. So if you imagine down in Mayo, remember where Kilpatrick was. So that was the first gold mine that we faced in this country, and we that was stopped. So that's kind of our experience with gold mining in this country, in the past. So now we see these other mines that we talked about here today, the Galantis mine and the mine up in Greencastle. So we've heard that story. Very important that we have people that are able to give testimony to that. But so there's historical context here. So there's maps from the 1885 that show copper and gold and silver being exploited here. So the geologists are very interested in that, always have been. And now they're understanding that all the way along these faults there is prospectivity for gold. And what they're saying is that the conditions in Leitrim are highly prospective, in line with what's happening in Cavanacaw, in Omagh. So they're interested in the areas along these faults, and then there's some areas that they're more particularly interested in. So the company Galantis Gold got money off the European Union back in 2012, 2013, and they wrote a report where they wanted to identify gold mining potential in the northwest, or along the border region. So they identified 4 areas, 2 in Donegal, and another one, I think it's over in Shercock or somewhere like that. You can see Manorhamilton there if you look. Manorhamilton was one of those areas. So there's a chapter in that report if you should probably, people should try to find that report. It's not that hard to find. And it talks about the potential for gold mining in Manorhamilton. Now, we're all interested in to know what is the real interest here. But what they say clearly in that report and in other reports that are published is that you know, the silver and the copper, we have an awful lot of arsenic in this. So I think the allowable amount of arsenic in drinking water is 0.01 parts per million. But there have been samples in this area taken back as far as the 70s and the 80s with 160 parts per million. So way above the threshold for safe drinking water. And when you look at arsenic, you realise millions of people all around the world are dying from arsenic poisoning, like hundreds of millions of people, places like India. So arsenic is a huge threat. And the mobilisation of arsenic. So we don't have to, I don't know how important that is, but it was what brought them here. So what I read in the reports is that when you have arsenic, it's usually associated with pyrite. But where arsenic is associated with pyrite, up to 1,000 times more gold can be held because of the arsenic. So the arsenic is something that they consider as a pathfinder. So can you see where we are there? So that's Lockhill. Okay, so these are the ox mountains in Sligo. So we used to have a zinc and lead mine in Abbeytown. Abbeytown, would you be familiar with that? And then here we are, this is Benbow down here. So there's a certain type of rock there, it's like a serpentine rock that they associate with gold mining. So and that sits on that fault that runs through. You see the two parallel lines? I don't know if you can see it. So that fault is quite wide. So they're interested. So that's see the grey spot up there, if you know where, if you can see where Pole Boy would be. It's that dark grey little circle. It's very smudged on the map. But so that's the area where there's a lot of falls there. So they're interested in going somewhere where there's a lot of falls and where there's that serpentine rock and where there's a historic precedent of gold workings. Okay? So what that report is all about is showing prospectors that this is a place of high prospectivity for gold. So now there are two license areas. So Fahary is up about here, and Benbow is here. See the mountain here is Benbow, and this is Pole Boy. So these are two license areas. Now they've taken all their samples in this area and up here because they're interested in the areas where the faults are. So the faults must allow the mineralization to come to the surface. So there's I don't know if I said that, there's about 12,000 acres in that area mapped. So do you remember Tamboran, when they were here? They were going to exploit 100,000 acres both sides of the border. So 50,000 in the Republic. So now we're looking at about 12,000 acres just to the south and west of Manorhamilton. Now this is from the report that was written in 2012. So this area here is the mountain, and Pole Boy is in this area. See all the faults here? So this is why there's a concentration of interest in that area. And this is the Lurgan Boy here, and then also up here in Fahary, and all of this area. So they're the areas of interest where they expect to find pathfinders that will lead them somewhere. And if you could read that text now, it'll just explain a lot of what I was talking about. So we have to consider like where we are. We're not where people in Cavanacaw are or where people in Greencastle are. We're at the very beginning. and they're telling us that this isn't important right now, but this is actually really important, because this is the last moment in the decision-making process where we have some power. Because under the guidance for prospecting, they have to do very little environmental assessment. It's basically the government just promotes prospecting, but they do need permission. So if they go to a farm and they can't find a farmer, then they can go on the land and pick up some stones and leave. But they're supposed to search for the farmer. And as they get into, they've been prospected now since 2014. So a lot of the light work is done. I might have a. So a lot of the light work is done. I'll leave that now. A lot of the light work is done. So I've looked at the legislation. So there's new legislation since 2017 that's written to promote prospecting and mineral development. And they've done an SEA, so they've done all of the proper environmental stuff. So when you go to court, you don't get anywhere. Like our government is after trying to bring in legislation in the last week that would mean that if you took one of these companies to the High Court, that you couldn't quash the decision to grant them a licence or to grant them a mining planning permission. It would just be remitted back to the planners. So we're in dangerous territory if these things carry forward. But when you look at the guidance that manages prospecting, they must make a deal with the farmer in relation to compensation before they can enter land. So that means that the people in this community, if they choose, can be effective. Now, setting that aside, we have our county development plan, we have our councillors here. We do see bans in some places that ban cyanide, or use of cyanide, or that could ban gold mining. That could maybe happen. It's difficult, but we've done that before. We could have a campaign that would ask for a ban on gold mining. You know, we could, if the political parties decided, like fracking, that they wanted to have a ban on gold mining in Ireland, that's something that could happen in the next Dáil. But until all that happens, the people will have to hold their ground here if that's what they so choose to do. And I think that unless they change the law, the landowners have a huge say yet in this. But that's enough for me to say.
It gives us a sense, I suppose, of what is happening on the ground here and where it's likely to go. The first people who may notice anything happening are those people who own the land. Most of it is owned by local people, but some of that land is owned by corporations, which own quite a lot of property, and also around the village of Durgan, where I'm from. And I would imagine that there's corporate arrangements that could be put in place to give access. Not saying there will be, I'm not saying Creech is interested in that, but I'm just pointing the fact out that there's a lot of land in this area owned by others, apart from the local landowners. Not always farmers, some people are mixed farming and other things, and some people are just landowners, they're not necessarily farming it. So in order to make mining a reality, there's three things needed to get planning permission from Leitrim County Council and from the department. I'm not sure if it's the fast track planning that they would be after, but all of this can be, I suppose, talked about and developed later. An integrated pollution control license is required for over a certain scale, so there will be, and that's to the Environmental Protection Agency. And there's also a state mining lease for mineral state ownership under the Minerals Development Act of 1940, a state mining license required to work the minerals vested in the minister under the Development Acts of 1979. So there are 3 steps to actually moving towards opening a mine. And we'd have to be conscious of those and I suppose be aware that despite what we may believe is not happening, and I know that Fidelma referred to it for quite a number of years, we thought nothing was happening. I think you said, so that's likely to be the case here, where you think there's nothing happening. We have a job of work. Anybody who is interested in protecting our water, protecting our community and protecting our environment is certainly required to come on board. So thank you, Eddie, for that. I know that your commitment and the IVA's commitment hasn't faltered in the past, and surely that may be the case in the future. Thanks. Our next and last speaker is Emma B. Mincks, who has travelled here from the Black Hills in South Dakota. She's a writer, witness, activist and scholar, and she's here to tell us about the health impacts of gold mining on her own health and her experience of seeing gold mining and all that it means in the Black Hills, South Dakota.
I'm going to stand too, if that's okay. Hi, good to see everybody tonight. I am wearing my mask still because I'm missing half of my throat. It was scooped out when I was 10 years old after I had cancer. I had tumors in my throat. They said only 30 people in the world had had documented cancers of that kind before. And it only comes from extreme radiation exposure. So being from the Black Hills, I believe that's why I had it, because there are a lot of rare cancers coming out of the Black Hills. I grew up in a place that, there's the North Black Hills where the Homestake mine is located. It's one of the most famous mines in the world. I'm sure you've heard of Black Hills Gold potentially, which is the, part of how the idea of the gold rush that was referenced earlier came to be. All of those open pit mining images look very familiar to me personally, just because half an hour from where I live, all of those things are happening and have been happening for over 100 years. In the 1870s, a bunch of people from Custer's army came and went on treaty land, basically used gold as a way to displace Lakota treaty people who were just hanging out. They were like, okay, we have gold here. Just don't worry, we'll just take a little bit. Just, we're going to go on for a little bit. Then they used it as a reason to kill and slaughter, hundreds of thousands of indigenous people and bison, and also break treaties and have everybody move in from everywhere to take that gold out of those mountains. However, the mine was in operation for my entire lifetime. So it started in 1876, but then it actually continued until maybe 15 years ago even, not recently. So it goes down thousands and thousands of feet. I don't know how many kilometers it goes down, but it goes down many, many, many miles into the earth. So they just kept going and going and going until they could find as much gold as possible within the ground, despite the health of all of the surrounding communities. There's people who grew up in Lead and Deadwood who have brain damage, hearing loss, vision loss, and got little to no compensation ever in their lifetime. Children grew up playing in the water by the mine because none of these health effects were ever advertised. None of the contamination was ever something that was shared with the communities who live there. And there's many pits now. There's actually a couple that were just opened this past year by a Chinese company that are near the Homestake mine. So there's a huge, huge pit, and then there's all those statues that Fidelma was talking about being built. We already have all that that's been there my whole life, but it's, extremely ugly, but it also just is really scary because now where Homestake Mine used to be, they've built a playground right next to it. There's a playground right next to the open pit mine, so all of those particles of poison are just flying all around, children playing. Many more children besides myself when I was little have gotten cancer from this type of thing. And it also does affect, everybody who lives right in that area, but it affects people who live hours and hours away as well, just because those water tables are connected. So the way water moves, it doesn't move just by township or, you know, this border or that border. It really just goes everywhere. So all of you guys are still connected to the Sperrins, and I hope you can all go up and see what they're dealing with up there for yourselves at some point, just so that you can really kind of see what you're up against. But I do think you guys have a lot of hope here still, and I have all my solidarity going to you from, you know, my personal experience just growing up where I grew up. And, you know, no amount of money that they're promising you is worth it. So many people have died, their children, their parents, the workers in the mines have, lose their minds all the time and commit suicide. There's just so much destruction that happens from this that is never recovered. And the mines are never responsible for cleaning it up. They always say they're gonna do a good job, they're gonna clean it up. They never do it. So please don't allow them into this community. I've been here for a few days now, and it's really a beautiful place, you know, just jumping in the lakes and everything. You guys don't want your water poisoned by gold mining. So please protect this place. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for listening to what everybody had to say. I suppose we have half an hour from the time that I mentioned we had 2 hours. So we have half an hour left. That would mean that people need to be concise with comments or questions. We may be able to answer the questions, we may not. But this is only the start of something probably quite long that's going to be going on here in Manorhamilton, North Leitrim, and in the Northwest. This doesn't just affect the 47 town bands here. This affects everybody in the region. Donegal, Fermanagh, Cavan, Sligo, Leitrim, and it's something we have to be aware of in that regard. So what I'll do is I'll open the floor, but James is going to say a few words first, and then I'll open the floor for comments and questions. Take 3 at a time. You put up your hand, I'll point to whoever to speak, and short inputs, comments, or questions.
I could have left it to the end either, but I just want to make sure people tonight, I mean, we're all here and we're working away at it, but we need help. That's all I'd say. Like, it's up to landowners, but it's up to the community. Like, say no more, we need help. It can't be just left to a certain few. Like here, it says, this is the Galantis report from 2018. It's very specific. It compares it to Cavanacaw, geology and structural similarities. It names the places exactly, Pulboy, the confluence of the Benbow River, which leads into the Bohan River, which leads into Lough Gill, which is where you're going to get your drinking water if you're living in Sligo. It's all connected. We need help. That's all I have to say. If there's any questions, please belt away, and that's my piece now.
Thank you, James. Certainly the help is needed, and I hope and know that it will come. We have one person in the audience who has other experience from Greece of mining, gold mining, and I suppose I'll give him the first comment from the floor, and after that I'll open it up. So I'll take 3 people, keep it short, but Arya is going to speak first.
You stand up.
Hi. It's okay, I don't need it.
Yeah.
No, you use the mic if that's okay.
All right.
Sing a song.
Hello, good evening. My name is Aris. I am from Greece, and the fight against gold extraction in northern Greece has been a great issue of our everyday lives, especially for people. I'm going to say from people who are not from northern Greece, for people from the left, let's say. I am not from northern Greece, but the uprising in northern Greece by the communities in Halkidiki was dominating for many years the everyday news and everyday concern. 2 times gold mining has been tried in northern Greece, 1 time unsuccessfully. The first time, in 1997, with a great deal of confrontation. The second time, interestingly enough, the company that started the effort in 2012, by name is a Greek company called Hellenic Gold, but 95% of its shares are actually from a Canadian company. Not the same one that James mentioned. The company that owns 95% of the shares of the Greek company is called Eldorado Gold, which is kind of shameless, I would say. For 10 years now, there's been not great, it's a horrible conflict up there. People are clashing at the work sites in northern Greece. Unfortunately, there is the workers there are Greek. They're not people who are hired from other countries. That's the first line of division within northern Greece when it comes to that issue. Then, of course, you start, the cherry on the top is that the people who are protesting gold mining have their everyday lives ruined because of trials and what we call in Greece judiciary terrorism. You're constantly looking over your shoulder, whether, at the smallest infraction could get you back to court because you were arrested in one of the protests up there. Not even being a radical. People who protest there are just people who live there and don't want their water table poisoned and their lives ruined. And then, of course, the issue of the use of chemicals. The threat to life itself, not just being threatened in your status as a citizen, let's say. The procedure they deploy up there is called flash smelting, sorry. The company has claims that 40% of that there is a reduction. There's a 40% reduction of water usage when they deploy this technique, which I am not competent to say what it is. I think Gordon might know. The thing is that the claim has been found fraudulent by the Supreme Court of Greece, which is called the Συμβούλιο της Επικράτειας. I cannot translate it right now. The Supreme Court of Greece has found that the claim is fraudulent, that it is not only does it not use less water, it is also not proven to be safe in terms of release of arsenic and sulfur in the water horizon, in the water table. The company has also been fined by the Supreme Court, but they have never paid their fines due to the mere technicality that the trial started when the fine was imposed. There was enough time interceding where the crime could be written off, let's say. And it's not such a long time, it was just 2 years. The point to hold here is that once extraction starts, I'm not going to say it's impossible to stop, but it's very, very, very difficult to stop. These people, they don't stop. And harassment by police and local, probably police as well, when they're not wearing their badges, It's very hard to get media attention, if any, and even when the Supreme Court rules in favor of the people, it doesn't mean something in everyday life. That's what I wanted to say. That's the experience from gold extraction in Greece. My final comment, and I'll pass the microphone, is we need...
So I'll take hands, 3 hands, whoever wants to go first.
Yeah. I just want to say one more thing.
Please do.
One last thing.
Wait for the hands to
Yes.
come up, so nobody wants to speak. Marian.
If there is, as I said to Donald, who brought me here today, if there is no worker involvement, no union involvement, if there isn't some sort of threat of strike or of solidarity striking, it is not going to have an impact, even if people protest violently, like they have in Greece. Some people may disagree with that. It is what happened in Greece. They threw Molotov cocktails at the machines. It hasn't stopped it. It hasn't stopped it. There needs to be worker involvement, official worker involvement. That's my final comment. That's my opinion. Thank you for having me.
We just get you to speak in the microphone, it's easier.
Yeah. Thanks, I'll be very brief. First of all, thanks for the presentation here this evening. It was excellent and a lot of detail, but that's important. And I think what we have to look at now is what is government policy and where do we go from here? I've raised the issue 4 times on the floor of the Dáil, punished the Taoiseach twice with Eamon Ryan. And in the response to me, Eamon Ryan was most defensive. I just couldn't believe, and of course, I didn't know the evidence that you had on him. And indeed, Pauline O'Reilly, I think she's the chair of the Greens, she actually led the campaign to stop gold mining in Cavanacaw. So that's the kind of challenges that Greens are facing. But I got a response from Eamon Ryan recently, and I think it's just important to read the last bit of it, because this is the policy that his department are now pursuing. And he talks about a draft policy statement, but he finishes up by saying, he said, a key priority of the draft policy statement is to build public understanding and trust in the mineral exploration and mining sector. I got that from him less than 1 month ago. So that tells you where he's coming from. Final point and question. If gold mining were to be banned, would that stop these companies? Because I did ask the Taoiseach, will they look at banning gold mining? And to be fair, he didn't give a negative answer. He just said they look at it. If that were to happen, would that stop these companies mining? That's my question. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm from Belfast, but I have experience with gold mining because I spent 5 years. I spent 5 years in Peru accompanying communities there who resisted gold mining. So in a place called Cavanacaw, and the project that was proposed would have been the biggest gold mining project in all of Latin America. It was a $4.8 billion project. And it was all given the go-ahead by the government, and it was being very aggressively pushed. But the communities stood up and they fought and they won. And these were campesino communities, farmers, and it was one. Well, there were many factors. There was international solidarity, there was judicial reviews. There was many tactics, but the main tactic was the organisation of the local communities, and the strength that they had, and the endurance and the creativity. Gold mining is never a big story, but it is possible to win. So by looking around the world, and it's very easy to do that now with the internet, And there's networks, there's global networks of communities resisting mining. So by getting these examples, you know, and learning from them, you know, you can be inspired by their tactics, but also be inspired by the fact that it is possible to win.
Next, Julie Hand to speak. Can I just thank the committee first of all for inviting us here and going to the bother of organising all of this, because I see a lot of the same faces that we had in the fracking campaign, and people need to understand the amount of hours of work that's going in, so we'll all have to give as much help as we can. Just following on from what Marian said, I think it was mentioned earlier to get a ban on gold mining, that would be fantastic if we could do it. But my experience, and as was said earlier, the councillors in Leitrim all supported the fracking ban. But when I proposed that going to the county development plan, I was told by the officials that I couldn't do it. And I had to go and get my own legal advice to find out that we could do it. But then there was no government policy on fracking, and that was one of the reasons why we could insert that in the county development plan. Now, I don't know when Marian talked about human rights and it's a draft policy. I'm not quite clear, and I couldn't find out in the last few days. Does the government have a ban or a policy in place that has been agreed and passed in the Houses of the Oireachtas? Now, if they haven't, then we can put that into the county development plan. But the county development plan, whatever's in that, has to conform to government policy, because when it's sent to Dublin or to the department, they can throw it out if we don't. But I haven't been able to try to get asked to clarify, is there a government approved policy on the statute books in relation to gold mining? So maybe that's something that we can try and pursue with our Oireachtas colleagues. Certainly I know from the members of the Leitrim County Council, we're fully in support of the farmers, and we just can't let this happen. And it's wonderful to hear the speakers here tonight, because I suppose we're in a better position. We have the experience of what we did with the fracking, and we also have the knowledge now from the people that have given up their time to speak to us. So 100% the councillors will be supporting. And I'm just wondering, do we know what is the consensus? Maybe that's not the right question to ask now, but the consensus amongst the farming community in the area, and will we have solidarity?
Answer the questions. Is gold mining will stop? Will it stop this action? It's very hard to know, but it would certainly go a long way. And we will be developing those concepts. And Mary, yes, and Marian is TD. As it happened, nobody introduced their names, or so as people are assuming to know. So Mary is a councillor in Drumkieran. Does the government have a policy? I don't know. We'll have to find out. I'm trying to find out. The farmers are very busy with the good weather. I think their farmers are local and they've shown solidarity in many ways. So I don't believe that solidarity with local farmers would be an issue. But building an understanding with them, because when somebody's offered money, price of everything goes mad. Yeah, I would think that the more information we can get out, the more people can talk about what happened here tonight, talk about the issues of mining, and gold mining in particular, that will build solidarity. We need solidarity from everybody, not just farmers and landowners, because this will take the whole community. This man here is next. And then Mark.
Gino. James, how are you? My name is Gino, I'm a county councillor in Sligo. I was first notified about this, I think, in October or November by Jamie Murphy and Joanne Neary had a motion put in the Sligo County Council supporting year ban for gold mining or exploration here. And while we had cross-party support in the County Council, as soon as it seems to go to Dublin, there's always a twist of politics or a twist on the say, where it might be here against the locally, but when they get to Dublin, they end up being for it. So I'd just like to give my support to you. I'm in Sligo, I know at some stage really affected. After looking at some of the programs on YouTube, people's waters get affected through mercury poisoning, animals, your crops end up getting, especially mercury poisoning, neurological issues, and end up getting cancer. But I would remind people what happened with the water charges. when it came to the police brutality, and also the Cork gas line down in Galway, where there was old women dragged out of their cars and beaten. So while I give you all 100% support, be wary of that. Like I said, we're in Sligo, we have passed motions against fracking, and it was in our county development plan where we disallowed fracking. But I would also just to say, give you all support and well done for organising this. It was a very informative meeting, especially for somebody who didn't really know too much about it. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Martin, Kenny, TD Sligo-Leitrim. Just first of all to commend the group here tonight on the very informative meeting, and certainly I think all of us understand, particularly with the battle there was with fracking, how so much of that was about the water quality, and about that when you fracture the rock under the ground, that it can cause so much damage to our environment. I think it's the very same problem that we're encountering here with regard to the gold mining issue. And while we have many minerals out there that may be needed at some stage in the future, gold certainly isn't one of them. It's a luxury item. We can live our lives forever. I think we need to understand that, and the point that Marian made, which I think we also need to try and get clarity on, is if we ban gold mining. Because when you stated there earlier on about the actual ore they take out of it, there's actually more lead in it. Could they just call it lead mining and go ahead and do it anyway? So I think we need to be very tactical as to what we actually are talking about here. What we're talking about is probably the extraction process that they use, whatever mineral is down there. I'm also aware that these geological surveys have been on for quite a long time. I know it's not far from me. I live in Omagh in South Leitrim. And not that far from me, about 4 years ago, I noticed two blue vans, and actually UCD was on the side of them, and they were in forestry. And I was talking to some people that were walking through the forestry that said that they were in there and they were gathering stones in big buckets that they had with them. So I imagine it was that type of stuff they were doing. But I think, and the point was made earlier in regard to the amount of land that we have, particularly in Leitrim, that's owned by corporate interests, particularly forestry companies and state forestry and all of that. We've seen it when it came to putting up masts, all of these things. That's the place they go first. They don't go to the local landowner, they go to the corporate interest first. And I think that's one of the issues we need to be aware of. Fundamentally, this is a battle, and it's all of these battles are between large corporate interests that are here to make massive profits, again, in spite of everything. And it's the old. I take with all due respect to the person here from North Dakota, the American thing, the almighty dollar is behind all of this. And that's really what this is about. Are we as a community able to defeat that notion that the almighty dollar is bigger and better than everything else? And I don't think it is, and I think we can defeat it. I think with all due respect to the people that are here tonight, this community has dug deep in the past when we see what happened with fracking, and we were able to get legislation in and we were able to ban that. And I think we can do the same if we all work together cooperatively to find a solution to this. And it is going to have to be done at a national level. I think that's clearly the point. Now, I also raised it a number of times with him and Ryan, and with government, and it's the same line you get back. It's only prospecting, nothing is happening yet, and it's general mineral exploration. And we can't be Luddites, we can't be stupid. We have to, of course, and they make you sound as if you're against everything. And science, tells us the dangers of this as well as the potentials of certain things. And the science tells us the danger of it. With the huge amount of work that's been done here tonight in regard to expressing the fears and the dangers that are there, that are scientifically based. We know about that. We know the dangers that are involved, and we have to put those dangers front and centre and make sure that we can do everything we can to certainly try and prevent this from going any more steps forward. Because the step that is in place at the moment is a very dangerous one, because you don't go exploiting or exploring for something unless you intend to exploit it. And we know that, and we have to end it now. Right?
Good evening. My name is Thomas. My partner's name is Jacinta. We are from County Clare. We came here to support the people of Leitrim in their stand. There is going to be prospecting in Clare as well. Many townlands. There will be prospecting for base metals, zinc, silver, lead, and in our townland, probably gold. 4 months ago, my partner and I, we went to the old ground in Ennis. There was a meeting from Mr. Ryan, and I quote, the man said, there will be mined in Clare. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Co.Tyrone. I'm from Greencastle. And I'm very familiar with the mining and all that. But this is a much bigger agenda here. People aren't aware of this here. This is a precious metal minerals agenda, and nobody's talking about it. In terms of Greencastle, they're talking about that mine. That there was 987 hectares. Marian has licenses there for 122,000 hectares. They've identified 11 gold mines. So if Fidelma mentioned there, there's going to be at least 11 of those. Not only that, the Marian say that they're actually prospecting and exploring for 50 different minerals. This is the tip of the iceberg. This is a precious metal minerals agenda where 25% of the north of Ireland is on the prospecting mine lists, 28% of the south. Be under no illusion this is just not gold. In terms of Galantis in Omagh, they had a cyanide processing plant as part of their application. They were going to use 2.1 tonnes of cyanide per day, 1 gram sufficient to kill it. 18 months down after plant permission, that was dropped. This is what we call project splitting. This is what they've done here now. In their original application, they said this cyanide processing plant was the only financially viable method to take gold out. The only financially viable method. That's why it was in the 2016 planning application. 18 months down the line, they dropped it, as I say. Beyond no doubt, it's coming somewhere. This plant, they proposed for $182 million. When they first came here, they said the gold was worth $1 million. The same now is up to worth $4 million in terms of the value of it. So that was over 20% of the value of gold, this cyanide processing plant. So now with Galantis in Omagh, they had a cyanide processing license, but didn't use it. As I say, the cyanide processing plant will go somewhere. As I think it was Eddie said there, the seam of gold goes from Mayo right on through to Scotland. Up in the north, they're talking 5 grand per tonne, up to 8 grand per tonne of gold. This is low-grade gold. They have to have this. And this man mentioned Clare, there's less gold there. So this is one big operation, that's the cyanide processing plant. The other thing you must remember is this whole thing is precious metal minerals agenda. GSNA and Geological Service there, including the talent survey from 2005 in the north and later here, they went to PDAC, they identified all the minerals they have, and they said Ireland is open for business, they brought them in. They said they were incentivized to come into the north of £326,000 grant to invest in A. All the political parties down here are forward. Do be under no illusion. No matter what they tell you, they will say something. Sean Keane and Sean Kane were both in different parties. They're both spearheading this campaign over to get people in here. So yes, I'm very glad to hear politicians saying they're against here, but be under no illusion. And if you don't think I'm right, go to, I think it's May 2019. Your government issued down south here a prospecting licenses document showing where all the licenses are going to be done and all the different types of minerals that they've taken. This is an attack on Ireland, just not here. So, and somebody saying gold mine will be banned. There's no chance. All your political parties are for it. And they're not just us here. Now what they're using now is the climate change agenda. They're saying now there, fossil fuels are bad, we need solar and we need wind. What do we need? We need cobalt, we need lithium, we need copper, we need lead, we need these critical metals. And that's how they're going to get it. In the north, they passed the climate change bill, where we were working to the UK target of 2008. During the climate change debate, they've told us this is the destination of farming. Farmers are not going to exist. So whenever you say the destination of farming, farmers will be on the side, but they're going to have to go out. There's 1.3 billion less cattle to meet the climate change bill down here, and over 1 million down in the north. So they will be financially at a loss to do it. They'll have to go through this. But the climate change bill and the precious metal minerals there is the thing.
Any other questions or comments?
But the other thing, just so you know, to show show how corrupt our politicians are, in 2014, they have agreed in the north to store all the UK's higher activity radioactive waste. In 2015, that's a national strategic infrastructure project. That's a constitutional issue. They have agreed this year as a preliminary thing, they will accept it. So this shows you the scale that they'll vote to. They do not care about us. This is all part of it. And this last 2 years of Stormont will finish now. They have created legislation for Westminster to take over and put or implement these projects in the north. This is what they're doing here to the UK Internal Markets Bill and various different bills. Stormont will fall and they'll blame Westminster. Thank you.
Anybody else? Come very quiet. You're just on time. Finish, so.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry.
Hi. Sorry, is that okay, Brian?
Yeah, this man is next.
I'll be very quick. Johnny Gogan, former chair of Leitrim, but I'm a long-term member of the Green Party. Completely opposed to. Nothing wrong with being in the political party. It's not the easiest position to be in on a daily basis, given the policies fighting climate change at the moment. But anyway, the point is that there were two aspects of the Minister's response and his department's response that I really thought were so faulty, given the number of submissions that were made, the thousands of submissions that went in. First off was the credibility of Flintridge as a company, given what James pointed out, that their previous holding of a license under another name. The reason they essentially gave up that company is because they probably hadn't been carrying out their works under the previous license, which is a reason not to have a renewal of the license. They should have been turned down on that basis. Secondly, Fidelma mentioned, and it's good to see you again, Fidelma, we met in Derry back last August. 500 years of supply of gold. The Spotlight program you mentioned pointed out this 500-year supply of gold in the world. And the department said that, well, that gold is not suitable for the purposes that we needed for the climate change materials that our friend from Greencastle pointed out there. We have to oppose this. We oppose fracking. We have to stop it now. And Eamon Ryan had his responsibility for handing out the original expressions of interest for fracking back in 2009, and really so disappointed that he's made this bad decision again. But we'll oppose it, and I think we will show the solidarity, and hopefully that Deputy Kenny has alluded to there. And I can say that as a last thing, it is also in contravention of the Green Party policy is the position that the Minister is now taking. Because driven from this constituency, we changed the policy of the party some months ago, essentially saying the circular economy is front and centre of how we should be dealing with extraction and cutting down and cutting back and ending extraction. So we will do our best. We don't have representatives in this constituency, but as activists, Bloy Gallagher is here with me as well. We will do our best to join with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? This man over here. Yeah. Any other comments or questions? Anybody? Hands up. This is the last call.
Hi, I'm a little reluctant to talk after hearing the boos for the Green Party because I'm from Canada, home of all these mining companies. Yeah, so, but I live in Manorhamilton now, so I'm converting. Okay? But yeah, I've worked in kind of ecological biodiversity monitoring in Canada for many years around all the mines, and some of the biggest mines in the world are located in Canada, and I've definitely seen a lot of the destruction that it's caused in the natural world. And then seeing this Water is Life here, I wanted to also point out that I'm hoping to run a workshop through B Park that talks about the importance of water in our area. So hopefully you'll be seeing about that, and I had something else to say, but I'm worried about being booed off stage now, so I'll pass over to Marian.
I'm the first song, Hollywood right there.
Sorry, can I just want to read one quote from Raymond Ryan, just so people know what he does? It says, Raymond Ryan has recognised the critical role that minerals will play in our transition to net zero emissions and carbon neutrality by 2050. This is all linked to carbon.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think hopefully Johnny's contribution will say that, you know, that should come from the circular economy as opposed to extraction, and that's what we are seeing here. And that message can go back from here to the Green Party, hopefully. Okay. We'll wrap it up then.
I just wanted to say something with regards to the correlation between what Fidelma had said, or what came up in their presentation about the gold mining companies providing the policies to inform government, and how similar that is to the OxyContin controversy that was in the US with the big pharma providing the information to the pharmacies and all of the people then suffering major addictions. And it also ties into the problem with the historic gold mining in the US that's still going to cost, I think, billions of dollars to clean up, and it will never be removed from the environment. And the other thing that I did speak at with Fidelma at a different time, she said that one of the chemicals that in her research came up when she read the planning document was chromium-6, and that's a chemical that was a byproduct for the production of Teflon in the DuPont manufacturing. And that was highlighted in television, in a movie, Dark Waters. And I think if anybody is questioning what the impact this would have, not just presently on our water, but for generations to come, the information scientifically is there, and the movies have been made about what has been done historically. And there was another one in the US with, what's her name? Aaron Brockovich.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Just take the mic, please. Yeah.
Kathleen Boyle, look.
I've no way to this area.
Fair enough.
And we have great community here. I believe we will thank you. But my question to you, as people who know everything about, how much land, what percentage of the land we're speaking about is under culture, and what percentage belongs to farmers? And my last question is, do you know, James, as a fact, that you have all the farmers behind you on this? Because at the end of the day, we're going through a very tough economic time, and money speaks. All right? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just one thing, sorry, Bob, with Brian from Northern Boy. Okay. I suppose I think we have to be very smart here in how we deal with it. I think there's stuff we can do locally, which we all have to do, but there's stuff we have to do at a macro level too, which only our politicians can do. And I suppose, given the fact that there's a lot of politicians here this evening, we probably have to use what they do in an election too, in terms of, let's talk about the farming. That's something we can do. It's very practically at local level. So maybe it's a situation that we need to go out and canvass the farmers with the science, James, for example, that you've done. This is a very tangible thing that we can do locally, right? And actually, during that, to inform them, to educate them, and to get the signs up in every gate in the community. I suppose where I live in Northern Boy, I'm involved with the Development Association here. I think there's general support for what you're doing here. But I think that's something we can do very tangibly at a local level. We have to be very smart as what we're doing here. Then there's the stuff that the politicians can do at a macro level too, and we obviously have to support them. So I think we just have to box very smart and prioritise what we can do. The gates is something we can do very easily, very, very quickly, and it's an education piece also.
Yeah, thank you, Ali.
Just ask Dunn to maybe comment or maybe Eddie on those questions.
Just there was a couple of points asked there that were important points. So will a ban on gold mining work? I mean, that's really important, Mary, you asked that. And it seems that there, like when you asked me, Martin, that question in the Dáil, he should have quoted government policy. You know, he didn't. I think it is open. I think because of what happened in Kilpatrick, the history, the support there would be. I think there could be support in this on this island to ban gold mining as a first step. You know, as a. I think it's something that's possible. You know, now whether it happens by dealing with the processing of ore with cyanide, you know, we have to look around the world and see what the best way to do that is. But I think it is possible. And the other question was that's part of that is, can we do it locally? I think probably more difficult to do it locally, like to ban fracking or to ban gold mining locally would be quite difficult. But we do see in American places that in local areas they have bans on the use of cyanide. You know, so there is things that we could do, I'm sure, and there are, like, obviously there's support for gold mining in America, yet there are bans in place locally, so it could be possible. And there's a little bit of this, you know, disillusion about what's possible. All the things that were said about when we started looking at fracking, people said it couldn't be done. You know, everybody said it couldn't be done. We didn't even know if it could be done ourselves, but it did happen. So the power of people to do things that are impossible, you know, it's happening all the time. If we put the same work into dealing with this problem as we did with other problems that we had, we will be successful. I've no doubt about it. And that's not taken away from anything that's been said. It is possible to turn things around. And I think that when we join up with people like Fidelma and all of the experience that we already have, and then go, we can do this. Like, you have run a massive campaign, and it's a pleasure for us to be here. We went up to support you. We didn't think we were going to have gold mining ourselves, but now we can join you, you know, properly. So that's all I wanted to say. This is going to end well for Leitrim, because God has protection.
Can I just come in there just 1 second? I don't need a mic for this.
Well, we're recording, so it's probably a bit better picked up.
Right. This will be the last. Sorry. Arthur Gibbons, Councillor of Sligo County Council, and in full support of this. I think myself that this was an excellent meeting here this evening. They give anybody a chance to express their views, and those that it affects mostly is the people within this area at this particular moment. But there's a bigger picture out here. What actually happened with Kilpatrick? Kilpatrick was seen as a religious monument. It was a religious icon. It was something that was going to set the world, the Western world, alight if they had to defy it and go in and defy it. That's exactly the way that happened. So I wouldn't look kind of compare, we say, what's happening here in Leitrim with Kilpatrick or anywhere else in the country. But the one thing that I will say, and it's actually in the favour of the likes of these speculators that's coming in. We are in the middle of a devastating economical battle at the moment, where everybody is worrying where their next few bob is coming from. We have young mothers out there at the moment that's waiting, that's wondering how they're going to get their children back to school, pay for books, the price of heating, electricity, everything gone out through the roof. And then we have this on the back burner. People's going to say, these people want to come in here, create jobs, it's gold, it's going to bring money about, and whatever else, it's going to be good for the economy. It's good. These are the things that needs to be fought. The one thing that I didn't hear this evening is how we're going to tackle this. And what I would say, what we do need in relation to is a meeting to exactly sit down and take that on board. The way that I would see it in relation to it, we've talked about the farmers and who it's affected. But there was a more important thing that was there. There was a water supply that's not just affected Leitrim, it's Sligo. I mean to say there's going to be families under danger, a death sentence, nearly, because that's exactly what's happening. And until you get that into people's head, and that's the ordinary 5/8, it's not everything operates around farming, it's ordinary 5/8. And that's our job as councillors, to use that as a platform. But what I would say where this campaign is needed, it is needed where it started here today. It is needed with the Oireachtas members that we have to lead at the front, and the likes of ourselves, the councillors, and the ordinary public behind that, and to push. But the main message to get out there, it's your life, your children, your family's life is under threat. It's as simple as that. Because remember this, what the economy is at the moment, the ordinary 5/8 is going to be looking at. They're going to be looking at the whole thing. This is good for the economy. It's not good for the economy, and that's what we need to get across.
Just Kathleen, you asked 2 questions here. Thanks, Arthur. About the amount of land. To the best of our knowledge, is about 25% of state owned by Quilcha. And then the second thing is about farmer support. Now, I think it's key to mention about farmers at this stage. It's only farmers and landowners that stop access to the land for prospecting. That's what it's about. It's not about because the community. We're all together in this, whether you're a farmer, shopkeeper, whatever, you know. It's not about farmers. It's just that the farmers can stop the access. In Pullboy, where I am, 12 landowners, I use the word fairly loosely, we're just minding it, are in total support. But this is why I asked for help earlier on. There's more than just 12 landowners in Pullboy. There's all over the 47 townlands, and we need to get people, you know, just knowledgeable about it. And it's not to tell them what to do, it's just to inform them. Hopefully the information from here tonight will do that. But that's the first start from my point anyways. And thanks very much.
Thank you. We do have that. As Fidelma mentioned, they had 50 community meetings. This is the first of many. It was to try and get some of the information out to say that water is life, our water is under threat, what has happened in other places, what we're facing, and the kind of things we need solidarity from everybody in the community, not just the farmers, but for now, getting those signs up, getting a message to landowners that if they see anybody on their property, they shouldn't be there. What are they doing? And you know, it is the front line of attack for now. I think this has been positive, and thank you all for coming along. And we do need you to get the word out, and we do need more people to help join the campaign. Thank you.